Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio. And now, here is Walter Bingham.
Hello and welcome to the program for November 10th, 2020, which in the Hebrew calendar is the 23rd of Cheshvan 5781. I am Walter Bingham, and what a week it has been. The anticipated effects of the US presidential election are only too evident. Segments of the population in the supposedly paradigm of democracy, the United States, have sunk into the abyss of medieval intolerance. And I shall talk about that. But first, about 3 items nearer home. You will hear about one of Jerusalem's major historic landmarks, the Tower of David Museum and Citadel, that is undergoing a major renovation and update. But before all that, something about the fruitless weekly demonstrations near the residence of Prime Minister Netanyahu. Every Saturday evening, the center of Jerusalem is thrown into utter chaos. Several main arteries are closed to traffic. Police cars are everywhere, and any car driver who is not totally familiar with the geography of Jerusalem's city center is likely to get seriously lost because, as usual, the police cannot be bothered to give helpful direction or erect signposts. Although it is Saturday night, there are economic losses, quite apart from the cost of policing. The demonstrators are mainly young, but the older generation is well represented, and the reasons for attending seem to vary. So, to get an idea of what moves people to come by the thousands every week, I talked to several participants of different ages as they walked to or returned from the demonstration. First, a grandmother. Another Saturday night and another demonstration outside the Prime Minister's house. That's been going on now for a number of weeks. And I have with me one lady demonstrator. Good evening. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Why are you going to this demonstration?
Because I love my country. I'm very worried about what's going, and I have 8 grandchildren. I'm worried about them.
You're worried about your country, but what's wrong with it?
There is a lot of hatred between people.
And what will you achieve by standing outside the Prime Minister's house and demonstrating? Stay tuned for her answer after the break.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
And now, here is Walter Bingham.
And what will you achieve by standing outside the Prime Minister's house and demonstrating?
I want to feel the energy that is right now here and to bring my energy, the energy of peace, love, and change. I like to feel the energy of the people that coming. I'm coming to demonstrate where a lot of people come together to say enough. Enough is enough.
Enough of what?
Enough of these times that people fight against each other. And it's so sad to see how the politician, especially the Prime Minister, the people to go against each other. I want people to come together and to listen each other, not to shout.
But is that going to be achieved by going to a demonstration where all this is actually happening, where people do oppose each other?
In the demonstration, I feel that people bring their sadness and hope.
Thank you very much. There's another gentleman with me now who is going to the demonstration. He's carrying a flag. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
Why are you going to the demonstration, and what is your black ribbon for?
We are going for the demonstration to protest against our Prime Minister and his criminal behavior. We think that he shouldn't be a Prime Minister because he did so many bad things to the country, and he is now going to be prosecuted in court, and someone who has a prosecution in court shouldn't be Prime Minister. So the black ribbon is to mark the black time of Israel when someone who is indicted in court ruled the country and doing so many bad things and talking against half of people.
What are the bad things he's doing for the country?
First of all, he's lying all the time. He didn't tell the country that he approved to the German to sell submarines to Egypt. He didn't tell the country that he approved for the Americans to sell the F-35 to the Emirates. And he is lying every second day about everything he is doing. These are two very critical examples, but he is lying all the time, telling lies to the people.
The sale of the F-35s, wasn't it a matter for the Americans where we really didn't have much say?
No, we had a lot to say because, first of all, the law in the States specified that the Congress need to keep advantage of Israel, and in this case, they wouldn't approve this sale if Israel would object it. And you can see it because at the same time they claim that this is an American issue. All the people in the cabinet that support him explains that he didn't give approval. But then we realize that the American claimed that they approve it just because he gave them the approval.
But the demonstrations have now been going on for many weeks, and nothing has changed and nothing has been achieved. What's the point of demonstrating when you really have no chance of achieving anything?
You see that in all the polls, the approval of this Prime Minister went down dramatically since we started demonstrating, because also his people start realizing that he is leading us to nowhere. So we hope that Blue and White Party will leave the coalition, and we hope that at one point someone in the Likud will realize that he is a burden for the Likud, and maybe they will appoint someone else to be the head of the Likud. But we need to demonstrate and to show our disrespect.
Supposing Netanyahu would now take the hint and leave his position, who do you think could do better?
I think everyone can do better. I think Bennett can do better. I think Yair Lapid can do better. I think Gantz can do better. I think Ardan can do better. Israel Katz. Whoever will be elected, for me, everyone can be a better prime minister than him, because he is already so long the head of the government. He is now lost his contact to reality. He is insane. Everyone who will be elected, we will accept. I think that prime minister who did so many wrong things like Netanyahu must leave.
Has Prime Minister Netanyahu done anything good for the country at all?
He did some good things, of course. But if you take the balance of what he did good, it is all in the previous years. And recently he's doing mainly bad things. The only good thing that he did, which is the peace with the Emirates and Bahrain, came against what he was preaching for annexation of the West Bank. And he was building up the annexation of the West Bank. Suddenly he forgot about it and peace with Emirates because Trump forced him to do it. He did good things, but today he's doing mainly bad.
Besides your flag, you also have a placard, and it's in Hebrew. What does it say in English?
Urgent, we want to give up our Prime Minister who destroyed our small country.
Thank you, and all the best. Some people are already coming back from the demonstration, and I have a gentleman with me. In fact, he is with his wife and teenage children. Shavua Tov. Why did you go to the demonstration?
We felt that we needed to do our civil duty and show our discomfort of what's going on here.
So what is going on in the country?
The government is not doing its job in fighting the corona situation and fighting the economic situation, and basically we feel that the citizens, we don't get what we deserve.
Isn't that a worldwide problem? Look at Europe today. They're even worse off than we are.
My concern is my family, and I don't care about the population in England or anywhere else.
What could we do here any better?
First of all, not use this pandemic as a way to get yourself out of your political and legal situation. and actually do the things that are right for the country and for the citizen and not what's good for you.
How could we do better?
Do the right things for the country, whether it's compensate the businesses for their losses due to the pandemic, not have these ridiculous lockdowns, which all the experts say are just ridiculous and won't solve the situation, won't cure the disease and won't stop it from spreading.
The worst part is in the younger kids because they really don't have school, so they don't see their friends, they don't learn anything for almost now a year. And I think that is the main thing that Netanyahu needs to be focused. It doesn't feel like politicians really care about us young people.
I understand all that. It's a very difficult task to balance the health and the economy.
I don't think it's difficult at all. There was like an agreement between the country, the government, and the population that if you're sick, you'll be taken care of. And what they did is just neglect the health system and didn't fund it as much as it should have been funded. The health system is overcrowded with sick people. And instead of pouring resources into the health system, they told the people to stay at home, to be in lockdown, so people will not be sick.
You just said a little while ago that there was not enough compensation for those people who are unfortunately in the business. But where does the money come from? If you compensate today, it will be your grandchildren who will have to pay for it.
Well, these lockdowns actually cost more than what it would have cost to fix the health situation and increase its capacity. Instead of increasing this number, they locked the country down, ruined the economy, and now, like you said, it's going to be our grandchildren and grandchildren's grandchildren who will have to pay for that.
And finally, you, of course, want Netanyahu to step down. Who do you think should be leading the government?
Anyone would be better than Netanyahu. Anyone. Take John Doe from the street, he would be better than Netanyahu.
Thank you very much. Those were the views of some of the demonstrators. Last week's headlines here in Israel talk about the memorial event for the 25th anniversary of the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and that generated discussions about his legacy and Prime Minister Netanyahu's fear for his and his family's life. He said, and I paraphrase, "Whilst freedom of expression is a democratic right, incitement to murder against any sector of our society, even demonstrators, cannot be tolerated." And all that while daily protests against his policy continue. Another item that is making headlines is the government's policy of handling the COVID pandemic. Long meetings and debates have not produced a definitive policy. Too many cooks spoil the broth is an old English proverb. In the meantime, one after another small trader is forced to close down. In the center of Jerusalem, where I live, you can see scores of for rent signs on storefronts. The only businesses that seem to have a chance of survival are those concerned with food. There is, however, one item of news that would normally make the headlines, but seems to have been ignored by the Israeli media, at least for the moment. And I make no apology for repeating exactly the same that I said last week, because I believe this is an extremely important matter. The chairman of the Directorate of Yad Vashem, Avner Shalev, is retiring at the end of the year. Yad Vashem is the world's Holocaust Remembrance Center, the mother and father of all institutions commemorating the Holocaust. Its raison d'être is not only to keep alive the memory of the horrendous Nazi killing fields, but also to remind the world that all people are created equal and to show the consequences to which baseless hatred can lead. Avner Shalev, who held the position since 1993, has transformed Yad Vashem from being just a museum to the world's foremost school for Holocaust studies and research. Its courses are oversubscribed by educators from all over the world. Shalev has also formulated the stencil of how to deal with the controversial issue of the Vatican under Pope Pius XII during the Holocaust. The government's suggested successor to Shalev is Efi Etam, and that has set the cat among the pigeons, as they would say in Britain. Etam, who is 68, is a retired IDF brigadier general with a distinguished war service, both in the Yom Kippur War and in Lebanon. He served for several years as a member of Knesset and was also the head of the National Religious Party. After the break, you will hear why I consider this so important.
Hi everyone, this is Andrea Simento from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Simento, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Did you know this psalm and many others were composed by a Jewish shepherd and musician who later became a king? Would you like to know some of the inner meanings of psalms to help you connect with God and strengthen your soul? An exciting and easy-to-read book is now available which will help you do just that. Software for the Soul, Psalms for Everyone, available on Kindle, Audible, and Amazon.com. Software for the Soul.
And now, here is Walter Bingham.
Efi Etam, who is the government's nominee to succeed Avner Shalev, has the public image as a staunch right-winger bordering on extremism. His anti-Palestinian Arab utterances are a matter of public record. The cornerstone of Yad Vashem is to be totally non-political. In fact, it is almost a sacred institution in Israel. Consequently, Etam's suitability to succeed Avner Shalev is being questioned. Another reason for the objection to his succession is that among his qualifications there is no background in Holocaust education or research or education generally, which should be a prerequisite for candidacy, as Yad Vashem is an educational institute. The religious constituency in Israel fears that Etam's political history, if head of Yad Vashem, would tarnish the institution and also encourage Holocaust denial and possibly BDS. There are also voices that accuse the government that appointing Etam would use Yad Vashem as a political tool by Netanyahu to strengthen his base, which has become shaky, by securing the modern religious sector and the right-wing support that is now gravitating to the Yamina party of Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked. So we have to wait for further developments. In the meantime, Israel, like most of the Western world, is preoccupied with combating COVID-19. And now, one of the places in Jerusalem that conveys to the visitor the feeling of literally walking in the footsteps of ancient history is the Tower of David's Citadel. Situated under the walls of the old city at the Jaffa Gate, it houses a museum that illustrates various aspects of Jerusalem life through the ages. To be able to better accommodate the thousands of visitors that walk through its exhibition halls every year and explore the antiquities, the Tower of David complex closed its doors while it is undergoing an extensive renovation and improvement. To learn more about what exactly they are doing, I visited the site and was met by Caroline Shapiro, their Director of International Public Relations, who acted as my guide. The first thing I had to do, before I was allowed to go further than the entrance, was to exchange my blue Breton cap for a white builder's hard hat. Then, surrounded by building materials, I stood in what was clearly a fortress, while Caroline Shapiro explains.
You are standing here in the courtyard of the Tower of David, And what we're looking at here is the beginnings of the renewal process for the Tower of David Museum. We're undergoing a $40 million project that is funded as the Claw Israel Foundation, but it's with the Municipality of Jerusalem, the Ministry of Jerusalem and Heritage, and the Ministry of Tourism. It's a project that started a few months ago, and the decision was to do it little by little so that the visitors could still come and enjoy the exhibition, and also the tours that we have outdoors through the Citadel. But when the second shutdown happened, we decided that there should be all steam ahead with the work for the renewal project. Overnight, every corner of the Citadel is being turned over, renewed. And the most exciting part is the whole visitor flow. So when the project is finished in 2022, people will arrive directly at the Jaffa Gate, as opposed to where it used to be, which are already in the Old City. And then people will come into the Tower of David and then go out through what was the main gate into the Old City. We have, of course, the Ancient Citadel that I'm standing in, and it was built over many, many years. We're tracing back 2,800 years of history of Jerusalem here. All sorts of architects from King Herod, Tower just here. We've got the Hasmonean Wall. We've got a beautiful Mamelukian tower that's 15th century Jerusalem. The bottom layer of these walls are the wide arches from Crusader times. 1099, the Crusaders came to Jerusalem. And Suleiman the Magnificent built on top of that Crusader fortress. And so the citadel that we see today is the most updated version from 500 years ago in the 16th century.
Why was it built originally?
We have walls here going back to First Temple time. Those were simply the walls of Jerusalem, but we're in an elevated area of Jerusalem, and the Hasmonean Palace was built in this area. But most strongly we can see today is the Herodian towers that stood tall, and from there the Herodian soldiers guarded the entrance to Jerusalem, and King Herod's palace act was on the other side of this wall. Within the Kishley excavations you can already see the foundations to his palace. So it was always built as a place for protection and for guarding, and now we have it as a museum, as a cultural centre, as a meeting between East and West, and old and new.
But what was it before, and what will it be after renovation?
It was used by soldiers, even in Jordanian times. Since 1989, it has been the Museum of the History of Jerusalem, and it will continue to be the Museum of the History of Jerusalem. The actual exhibition rooms are being renewed, and you're seeing that all the pathways and everything around here is being renewed so that it is more accessible. We're putting elevators in so that it becomes an accessible site. Of course, the Citadel was built not to be accessible, and we're doing exactly the opposite. It's very important to the museum, and hear more about the conservation that is being put onto the Tower of David.
So that you get a clear idea of what I am seeing, I want to try and paint for you some pictures in sound. Like all excavations in Israel, this project is supervised by the Israel Antiquities Authority, and their resident archaeologist is Noam Silberberg. To meet him at what looked like his office, a flat area of dirt, we walked on a quite dangerous temporary pass through the center of some excavation.
I brought you some stuff that we excavated last days, most potteries, mainly from the Second Temple period, but also some later stuff, some Ottoman pipes, also a jawbone of a pig. It's very similar to human teeth.
How old do you think this jawbone of the pig is?
It was buried with sediment from the Second Temple period, so it's very earlier.
Did they eating pigs in those days? That's not kosher.
Yeah, because we need to remember that we have also residents that were not only Jews here. We have a roof tile from 1st century AD, more or less, and we can see here two letters on the roof tile, X and F, two letters. And this is the signature of the 10th Roman Legion It was here in Jerusalem. This legion destroyed the Second Temple, and afterwards it was part of the battles of the Roman Empire in the Middle East.
It's amazing how from a small piece, which is 2 inches long and 1 inch wide, that you can actually know exactly what it was.
Exactly. So we can see the X, which is the 10th, and the F for Fretensis. This is the name of the legion. So this is from 2,000 years ago.
Pieces of pottery?
Yeah, pieces of shards.
And is this worth keeping?
It's not amazing, but we will keep it, yeah. We have storage jars, and we have some cooking pots, and when we will finish the excavation, we will open everything, and we will see which kind of vessels we have, which period.
Do you expect to find anything of great importance?
We have in the area a monumental wall, a terrace wall, that we still don't know exactly which period it is, but it's connected to a drainage tunnel. And I hope in the few days from now we will find more information about it.
As we were walking along the builder's path here against the wall, there was some round, obviously, antique structure. What was that?
The aim of the previous excavation that we did here a couple of weeks ago was to find the foundations of this massive wall. And surprisingly, it was quite short, the base. And while we are excavating this foundation, we had also this installation that you're talking about, the circular one. There are meager information about this. Could maybe a silo or a storage installation. We don't really know. This is a problem in archaeology because we have installation and people use it, but when it finishes to function, people throw it like a pit. And items that we have inside it represent the later periods, not the period itself.
This is the area where the archaeologists sit. So I'm sitting here on a table in the archaeologist's den, so to speak, where a man has a bowl of water and a lot of the small pieces, and he's cleaning them with something like we use for washing up, because there's a lot of sand and earth on it. Once they're cleaned, the archaeologists will see what exactly they were. Now we're going further down into a very deep tunnel.
So this is going to be first gallery of the Tower of David, where we're going to talk about the chronological development and the history of Jerusalem.
And that is already deep underground.
It's called the Crusader Hall. It's called that because it was built by the Crusaders.
This is similar like I've seen in Akko.
Correct. If you look here, you can see that there is a pattern on the stone that's been carved out. It's called a mason's mark, and that is from the Crusader period, when the builders at the time would put a mark in their stone to show that it was their work.
Going up into a different part of the building. So we're walking now between some walls, inside a kind of tunnel.
Why I wanted to show you this tunnel was look at the ceiling.
It's vaulted.
There are two parts. One of the parts has got this nice cream mixture of cement between stone, and that is all the traditional limestone mortar.
Hear what this is all about after the break.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
and me, William Hall,
on The Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
And now, here is Walter Bingham.
Why I wanted to show you this tunnel was look at the ceiling here.
It's vaulted.
There are two parts of the ceiling. One of the parts has got this nice cream mixture of cement between stone, and that is all the traditional limestone mortar. So they're taking out all the old material between the stones, and they're redoing it so that you can really see the beauty of the original stone. This will have been done 40 years ago, and what they're trying to do is replace the modern materials with traditional style materials. Here, this is salt crystallization that has come out of the stones. They've dug down.
So we are standing in an excavated part that is showing stones that were never seen before.
They've got to bedrock.
Amazing. So, walking through here in the past, one had to stoop. When one walks antiquities and tunnels, one cannot be but amazed at what people in those years used to achieve with primitive tools purely by hand. There's a great deal more I could tell you, but I leave the last word to Elad Lieber, the director and curator of the Tower of David Museum and Citadel.
As you can see, after very successful 3 decades of being the Museum of the History of Jerusalem, we are now in the middle of a very exciting upgrade and renovation project. And since the COVID-19 crisis, we could cut the timetable of the project and make it 1 year and a half instead of 3 years. Till then, we can renew the exhibition of the museum that tells the full story of 4,000 years of history of Jerusalem inside the original guard rooms of the Citadel, and of course to preserve the walls and archaeological remains. This project is very important also because we are going to improve the accessibility of the museum. As you know, the Citadel is a medieval building, heritage building, and we had to deal with a lot of preservation issues. But together with the IAA, the Israeli Antiquity Authority, we found some solutions. We're going to have 2 new elevators, and hope that the beginning of 22 visitors to Jerusalem will be able to enjoy a very up-to-date and well-preserved museum.
What are your qualifications to have been selected as director of this enterprise?
It's a very good question. The most important thing is my big love to Jerusalem. I love the city. I came here, I was 18. I came to be a tour guide. This was my army service as a Moach Hayelet. And since then, I love the stories of Jerusalem. My first dream was to be a museum designer, but I fell in love with the content and became a curator, and I feel that my challenge is to engage the visitors with the story of Jerusalem by using the best of the best, which is history, archaeology, stories, images, maps, models. It's a very, very unique city. We belong here, but most of the people know so little about the story.
Who is the overall authority here?
The museum is a public institution, and our chairman is always the mayor of Jerusalem. Right now it's Moshe Leon. The management of the museum contains also the Jerusalem Foundation and the Israel Museum.
You have a lot of exhibits here, which obviously are not on show. Where do you store them?
One of our exhibitions, the last one that we opened this summer, it's still here waiting to be opened soon, I hope. I think it's going to be the end of November maybe, but most of them are not here anymore.
Do you also accommodate here visiting exhibitions?
Yes, of course, because when the story is connected to Jerusalem, it's very interesting for us. Our challenge is to discover Jerusalem in many aspects. Sometimes it can be archaeology, history, food, fashion, people, music, culture, art and design.
And finally, do you go out with your exhibits to museums of other countries?
Absolutely. We had a design exhibition about Jerusalem as an inspiration for designers. It went to the Milano Biennale and also to London. We discussed the photography exhibition about the Temple Mount. We planned to show it in New York, but the crisis came and changed the plans.
Well, I wish you success.
Thank you so much. We also hope that crisis will be over soon and people will come back to their life and, of course, to Jerusalem.
And now, to the American election. This should have been a post-election broadcast, but although Joe Biden has been declared the president-elect, the election chaos is far from over. It is far from certain that President Trump will concede a peaceful transition of power and vacate the White House following the inauguration of the new president on January 20th, because for some time now he has indicated that because of COVID-19, fewer people will vote in person. The system of mass mailing of ballots will lead to voter fraud. It is difficult to control the process of counting votes in the US because, unlike everywhere else in the world, the US does not vote as one country with a unified method, but as 50 separate states, each with its own rules and regulations. That means that in one state, mail-in votes need to be postmarked latest on election day, while in another, postmarks are not checked and mailed votes are accepted up to several days later. You can imagine the confusion and the opportunity to cheat. Indeed, mass mailings have resulted in people long dead or no longer resident in the county submitting their votes. Several states prohibit partisan election observers from being close enough to read the postmark or the signature or the ballot, although the Constitution seems to allow that. Pennsylvania state law requires observers to be present, and a judge ordered it, yet they are totally excluded. That, to put it mildly, raises suspicion. Many other signs of possible voter fraud disadvantaging Trump have been recorded. That is why he has repeatedly requested to halt the count pending further checks. His concern is understandable in the context of this year's Americans' voting pattern. Republicans voted in person, while Democrats voted mainly by mail. The mailed batches are counted later and tend to favor Biden. Thus, Trump's early lead is being successively eroded. Trump suspects irregularities and has started several legal objections. In due course, they may well end up at the US Supreme Court. That's why, anticipating this, he insisted on installing Amy Coney Barrett as Justice of the Supreme Court, replacing the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, before the election. I don't believe, however, that in the country's present volatile climate, the Supreme Court would in each case judge in favor of Trump. I believe Trump is severely misjudging the court. I do not fear Biden as president as much as the possibility that his signs of mental strain may lead him to being incapacitated during his term, and that his running mate, Kamala Harris, would then replace him. She is known as the most radical socialist in the Senate and would bring her views into the Oval Office. The consequences of U.S. foreign policy toward Israel and also Iran would radically change, and I must admit that this is my most important concern, not having any U.S. affiliation or connections. What does arouse my interest, however, is how this election triggers totally irrational behavior in otherwise ordinary citizens who lose their composure while acting as if the US is a banana republic. Trump loyalists are threateningly demonstrating outside the counting centers, echoing Trump's insistence that the votes are rigged. There are even fears of their breaking in. Such wild behavior in any African state would trigger United Nations observers to keep order. And I'm here not referring to the rioters who are criminals exploiting the chaos to loot, rob and steal from any store they're able to enter, knowing that in Democrat-controlled cities they're free to openly load their vans to capacity. Pictures show the Trump supporters to be middle-aged. On the other hand, I heard the disguised voice of one postal worker alleging that he was instructed to hand-stamp an earlier date on a batch of ballots. That, if true, is clearly criminal. The political fallout of this election will be felt for months. This confusion is also an opportunity for extremist groups like Antifa to freely exercise their revolutionary agenda. And what's interesting is that the Antifa hordes, meaning anti-fascist, are behaving worse than fascists.
This is not a protest. This is not a protest. This is war.
This election, instead of citizens' orderly choice of government, has become a reason for baseless hatred that will destroy the democratic fabric and place of opportunities for which the US was known. It will try to retard the country into a socialist republic that will spend the financial reserves for free education, free healthcare, free social services, free everything, until the coffers are empty and socialism will then show its real face. That's why the United States needs a shrewd businessman at the helm, with an incontrovertible record during the last 4 years of creating employment for all sectors of society, rather than a stale politician whose records are alleged actions to enrich himself. The future of that once great country is at stake, with implications for the rest of the world. I believe that Trump's legal battles will go on for quite a considerable time, perhaps even until after the inauguration. And then there is the composition of the Senate still to be decided, which at the moment is equal between the Republicans and Democrats. And there will be a recount in Georgia sometime in January. There is still a long way to go until all the facets of this election are signed and sealed. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet. It is with the deepest sadness that I have learned that Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Harav Hayakov Tzvi ben David Aryeh, Zichron Livracha, passed away early on Shabbat Kodesh, 20th of Marcheshvan 5781. That's Saturday, the 7th of November, 2020. Rabbi Sachs was a giant of world Jewry and will be truly missed. And with that sad news, I have to end this program. But you can hear my comments on the protracted saga of the U.S. presidential election by going to the Walter Bingham file page on our website, where it'll be posted tomorrow. I am Walter Bingham, wishing you a good and healthy week, and as the weather changes, please look in on your elderly neighbor to see if he or she is comfortable. Goodbye.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at israelnewstalkradio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling from the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.